Hello and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to talk about how to build websites using SASS. I'm going to show you what I have done. This is a web page that I have created. It has like sections. Each section has its color. It's probably divided into rows. Some sections need clicking or interactivity to show some more information. And some other sections are divided into rows with different colors and a footer, of course. You have also a contact form with a submit button. I didn't make it like centered because I've seen in some corporate pages that they use they put the contact form on the left, so I left it like that. I don't pretend to be, I don't have any like extensive designing skills because I'm not a designer, I'm a programmer, but I just wanted to show you how things could be done using SASS. And after using SASS, you probably will never go back to CSS. So let's start by exploring whether you have Ruby installed on your system or not, because SASS depends on Ruby. So if you are on Linux or Mac, most probably you have Ruby already installed, but let's check that by typing ruby-v, which will tell you that you have the version, you have Ruby installed with the current version. Now, if you have SASS, then you can check that out as well by typing SASS-v. Like me, for example, I have SASS already installed. But if you don't have that, then on Linux and Mac, you need to type sudo gem install SASS. Okay? Gem is the package manager for Ruby. It's something like npm for Node.js or pip for Python. So you type sudo, if you don't have administrator rights, gem install and SASS. If you are on Windows, then you need to install first Ruby. And this is done by going to the rubylang.org page, and you go to Ruby installer and you click this link here, okay? Or you can type the link itself like rubyinstaller.org, and you will get into a page that has a Windows installer on it. So you download that installer and you install that. After you install that, you need to go to your command line on Windows, of course, and you need to type, where did I have that? Yeah, you need to type gem install SASS on your Windows command prompt, okay? Now, oops. Okay, so we will talk now about the project structure and how I've did that. So I'm going to show you my already done project. So I am not going to close all. Okay. So I'm not going to create the project from scratch because it will take a lot of time. All I'm going to do is explain to you how did I've done that. So you open your VS Code or whatever text editor you have. I prefer VS Code, Visual Studio Code, because it's very versatile and powerful. And for my needs, it's more than sufficient. So you create a folder inside, I don't know, you make a directory and you call that folder whatever you want. For my project, I've called that consulting company. Okay, but you may want to name that directory something different. Okay, so you create a directory for your project, and then inside that directory, you create a directory for SASS, you name that SASS. You create a directory for your JavaScript code, you name that JS or whatever you want. For your assets and images, you create a directory called img image, and you create a directory called CSS. That's all you need to do. And you open your terminal, integrated terminal inside okay. And here I'm going to show you how you compile SASS into CSS. But before that, I'm going to tell you the structure of the HTML that I have created. For example, here, if you go here, so you see I have the head here, and I have the definition of the viewport and the initial scale and the web device weight, which will enable you to create responsive designs. So your page will be responsive in that case when you scale it down. And this is a feature that I have used here in this project. Okay, then you link your style sheet from the folder of the style sheets, which is css app.css. Okay, then you create a main section for your web page, and in this main section, everything is going there. Okay, you tell that you assign a class called container for that. You place a header inside the main, because this is the header where, let me show you the page again. So you have a nav bar here, okay, and you have a logo, and you float your nav bar to the right. You have a section here where you show some corporate photo or something that you want to show for presentations, and some text here that explains whatever, some marketing logo. Okay, and after that you have other section and another section and another section and etc. So I have divided all the page into sections. So here you can see that I have this header here contains the navigation bar, okay, the navigation, and the navigation itself is divided into the logo div and a checkbox. I'm going to explain that later when I'll be explaining the responsive part. Then you have the menu here, and then after that you have the section that contains the photo, the corporate photo, okay, and you have after that one section after another section after another section, okay, where you have like random text or whatever you want. And at the end you have the footer, okay, and the footer you have a copyright sign and something called consulting company, whatever you want to say here, whatever your company is. And of course I link my JavaScript file at the end, before the end of the body tag, right? So of course, for the contact form, I have included the HTML itself here, because this page is static. If you want to add some dynamic content, you have to do it a bit differently. For example, you need to set up a Node.js server that will serve you JSON data when you call that by clicking at endpoints, etc. But this is a different topic for another video. Now, this is the contact HTML file itself, which you have seen. It is almost the same. You have the header here, which has the logo, and it has the menu, and it has the checkbox with the label that is assigned to that checkbox. That's for the responsive part. And you have a section for the photo, and you have the form that contains, well, the form that you have to submit that. All right, there is nothing there special. It's a form, just has an action. For now, it's an empty action. The method is post, and the class is the form. Okay, so you have a text area that has whatever you want. It defines a certain number of columns, a certain number of rows. It has an ID, blah blah. Okay, and you have another section here for your name with an input, text input, where you can place your name. You have an input placeholder for your email, and then you have a button, a submit button. And of course you have the footer. And of course, you link your JS file at the bottom. Nothing so special. Now, right. So now I'm going to explain to you how to compile a SASS file. Okay, let me close this. I forgot this. So, if you have a SASS compiler installed, then you compile your SASS file by typing this. You say SASS and you say the name of your file, for example, your file.sass, and the output file, which is whatever, your file.css. Okay? Actually, it's like that. You need to place a colon between the input and the output. Okay? In my case, I have used a lot of stuff, a lot of files here. Okay, and these files are called partials. SASS files are either main files or partial files. The main files don't have the underscore at the start. They are something like this. They are clean names, I'd say. The partials are something that has an underscore at the start because it tells the compiler, the SASS compiler, that don't compile me into a CSS file. Instead, consider me as a partial that is going to be included in another file. And in this case, the main file here is app.sass. And if you go to that app.sass, you see that I have imported a lot of files. I'm going to explain how did I do that. So I have sections. There is a methodology called smacks. If you go to this web page, smacks.com, and you read through it carefully, then it explains to you that whenever you create a bigger project, then you need to structure your CSS into a certain way so it becomes modular. Okay, so for example, in this case, I have structured my project into base or main SASS files, the layout files, the module files, okay, and the main SASS file. And whatever you do there, if you create a partial here, okay, for example, this guy here, okay, you create a partial, you put your code, and then you include, you import that partial, oops, you import this guy into another partial, okay? And after you have done this, you import that partial that imported another partial into your main SASS file, okay? So you see I have imported the base there, the plugins there, the layout there, the module there, okay? And in each subfolder here, for example, the modules there, okay? The modules there imports the box and form partial. And the form partial, for example, has data that has styles that are defined, etc. And these are incorporated into the modules there. And after you do that, you import the modules there into the app.sass file. And after you import all these files into the main SASS file, you compile that file, that one file, into the CSS file, and you produce after that your fuckingly big, huge, ugly CSS file. Okay? So, as I said, once you start using SASS, you will hardly go back to CSS. Okay, now, in order to compile your SASS files, your partials, etc., you need to say SASS from the SASS directory to the CSS directory. That's it. Okay? It will, your SASS compiler will go into the SASS directory. It will find every SASS file there. It will compile those, and it will place the output into the CSS file. Okay? But in our case, if you do any change to your SASS file, you will have to go back to your command prompt and type this command again and again and again. So this is kind of tedious, and it's actually annoying. So in order to not repeat yourself 100,000 times, you do this. You say SASS -- watch, then from SASS to CSS. And this will start your compiler in watch mode. Whenever you change or do anything to your SASS files, the SASS compiler will automatically compile your SASS files into CSS. Okay? So SASS now is watching for changes. Let's say I go, I don't know, variables. I'll put a variable here, and I will say that button background color. Okay, and I'm going to say, I don't know, 4, 5, 6, something like that. Okay, now I save that, and I see that the changes are detected, okay, and they are compiled into the main CSS file, which is called app.css, and a source map generated from that. So when you want to debug your file, you know where to go back to. Okay, so I have explained this, compiling SASS. Now, there are two syntaxes associated with SASS. Okay, there is let me show you the documentation. If you go to sass-lang.com, then you go to the official webpage of SASS Preprocessor. Okay, if you go to the documentation, there are two things, two ways to how do you call it? Two syntaxes. Okay, so you have the SCSS syntax, which is very similar to, let me show you some functions, for example, which is very similar to CSS. Okay, so you write almost similarly, you write styles almost in a similar way to CSS. But there is another more efficient and shorter style, which is the indentation style, which is the SASS style, actually. And that's the indented here. So this style is far shorter, it's more efficient, it's simply more beautiful. Why would you want to write curly braces all the time, semicolons all the time, when you can just write indented SASS with no semicolons, with no braces, with nothing? Okay, right? Like in this example, okay, you say, okay, I need the form container style, okay, and I need the color property inside that. Okay, you have two spaces for indentation, like 1, 2, okay, and by doing this, you say that the color property here belongs to the above selector. Okay, that's it. No semicolons, no curly braces, nothing. That's it. So if you want to get an element inside that style, for example, you name that element and you go, you continue your job. For example, here, H3, okay? So what I'm saying here is that the H3 element inside the form container selector has these properties defined. Okay? No semicolons at the end. You name the property, you name the value. That's it. You say the form element inside the form container style, okay, or class, has the padding property of this, the font size of this, and all the paragraphs inside the form, because I have, I think, one paragraph there. Yeah, because I have paragraphs here. Okay, so you see. Okay, and all the paragraphs inside the form have padding of 5 pixels. Okay, you say, for example, a button class, okay, has a width of something, height of something, and this is called mixin. I'm going to explain what a mixin is in a second. Okay, so a mixin is actually a function, sort of. Okay, so for example, in order to define a mixin in SASS, you only place an equal sign and the name of your mixin or your function and the parameters that it takes. And the parameter must be must start with a dollar sign, because that describes a variable. Okay, now what you have to do when you create actually a main application SASS file, okay, is that you import your most important or most common properties like variables, for example, or your mixins at the start of your file, because when you do that, the content of those variable and mixins files will be visible in all subfolders, in all sub documents. Okay, for example, you have the mixin folder, you have the mixin file here defined. Okay, it contains some mixins there. You have the variables SASS file defined containing some variables here. Okay, then because you imported those two files at the start of your main SASS file, then the content of the mixins and the variables are being seen, can be recognized in other sub files, like in the partials, for example, like here, footer. If I say, for example, use the mixin here for changing the radius of the page, okay, that mixin that I have defined there, then I can use that here. Okay, now back to mixins. Here, the definition of a mixin is very simple. You place an equal sign, you name your mixin something, you define your parameters if you have any. Each parameter must be started by a dollar sign, because that defines a variable. Now, below that, using the indentation rule, which means 1, 2, okay, you name your property that you want to change. Okay, for example, border radius for Mozilla, for Microsoft, and for WebKit for Chrome. Okay, and you place the value. That's it. Now, if you wanted to do the, now imagine, okay, you have a couple of buttons, 4 or 5 buttons or divs, okay, and you want to change the border radius for those. Okay, you need to place that code all the time below every div and every element that you want to change. You have to write 4 rows or whatever, okay, in order to do that. Instead, by using mixins, you can place only this line. You say border radius, place 5 pixels, for example, okay, and for each element you can change the parameter the way you like. If you want to use a mixin, okay, now here is how you defined a mixin. When you want to use a mixin, okay, you just say plus the name of your mixin and the actual parameter. See, I have only one line that defines the properties, the border radius property for an element. In this case, it's a button. Imagine that you have a couple of elements or many elements that you want to change the border radius for. That would be like, for example, if you have 10 elements, that would be 10 multiplied by 4 lines. Okay, 40 lines. You would have to copy paste 40 lines in order to change the border radius for 10 elements. Now, you place only one line and a parameter inside that. Okay, so I have explained mixins. Now I'm going to explain variables. Variables are very simple. Okay, you just place a dollar sign, you define the name of your variable, you define the property. For example, logo color. Okay, so I defined the logo color to be something. Okay, for example, the background, the colors here. Okay, you can define a color scheme or a color palette here, for example, for yourself, just by naming variables, right? And these variables can be used wherever you want. When you go to another section, for example, let me see, layout sections, for example. Okay, so here, for example, I used another mixin which is called set color, and I've set the background color for that. Okay, so colors, yeah, here I have used another mixin here, and I have set the background color and the color for the section itself. See how mixins are very useful in this. Yeah, here, for example, I have used a border radius for a div in order to, you see, I have used one line instead of copy and pasting 4 lines. Okay, now, so that's how you define variables. You place them in one file, you import that file into your main application file here. Okay, and in that way you can see your variables inside all those partials. Right. Now I'm going to explain the parent selector, which you have seen probably mentioned here somewhere. Okay, this guy here, the ampersand, is the parent selector. So when you define a div, for example, you define the properties of the div, and then you say the parent of this property, of this pseudo style of pseudo class, or I don't know how you call that. Okay, so when you have the div here, and when it is hovered above, then you can change the properties, the certain properties here, like the background color, the cursor, for example. Okay, so this ampersand tells you the parent of this property. For example, here the div, when the div is active. I'm going to show you something else. Yeah, for example, here the div, when you are selecting the nth child. Okay, the odd nth child, for example, you set the color for that. Yeah, that's for example for how did I change the color here, like this section and this section, for example. So I have a list of divs or rows, and for each one, for the odd ones, I have changed the colors into this this kind of color, this grayish, bluish, whatever. And for the even divs, I have put this grayish, darker something color. Okay, so this is how I've changed the colors for the rows. I have defined columns here for the, yeah, for example, I have defined that each div has 2 columns here, okay, and I have done this using the column count, okay. What else I have done here? I think that these are the most, yeah, okay, for yeah, I have the first section I've called, the first section is called photo, and it's this guy here, okay, and let me just make this a little bit easier to see. So, right. Okay, so this guy here is a special section that is called a photo, and I have placed here a background image, okay, which is this that you have seen here, okay. So the background image is something from the internet that I have found. It has no repeat as background repeat, so it's not repeating itself. The background size is auto, and the border box, that's the sizing method, and the overflow is hidden, which means you don't see the overflow here below, okay. There is nothing really to it. Of course, I'm going to place my code on GitHub, so you can download that from there. The thing that I wanted to show you is actually how you, okay, I'm going to show you the responsive part. Okay, so if you take this web page and scale it down, okay, so it changes into the responsive mode. Okay, in the responsive mode, the divs are one columns each. Okay, so you see there are no two columns here, for example, and they are like displayed one above the other. Okay, so I have, for example, disabled the photo on the background because it might hinder performance. So just in this case, it's probably better to use plain text if you prefer. The rest is mostly the same. You have the burger menu here. If you click that, okay, so you see there's a menu here displayed. Okay, of course there's no mouse in mobile, so you need to simulate the actions of your mouse with your finger tapping. Okay, so you click that burger menu again, the menu disappears. Click it, it appears. Okay, so the same here. You show these guys here. Okay, and the burger menu has a fixed position. Okay, so I'm going to talk about that. When using SASS, there is something very, very cool about coding. You can actually code in place. For example, you can place your media query wherever you want. I mean, depending on your actual situation, what you want to need, what you want to do. For example, okay. For example, I have the section that is called photo. Okay, so I define the photo for the normal desktop version, and after that I place a media query just below that, and I say if the screen is smaller than 724 pixels, then make this section disappear. This is how I made the photo section disappears. Okay, so it just goes away completely. Then, for example, you define your first section, blah, 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 some properties here, properties there, and then you place a media query just below that. So this is very neat. This is cool. You don't have to place your media queries just in one place, and things get messy, and you need to go forward and backward to find your properties that you want to change. So you define something for your desktop version. That's cool. And then you place your media query just below that, and you do whatever changes you want. Okay. This is the how do you call that? Okay, this is how you click the checkbox. Okay, the burger menu, and this is how you change the stuff for that. But I've relied on JavaScript in order to change a couple of things. I will show you that in a second. So for the second section, which is, let me show you, second section. So the photo section is disappeared. This is the first section. This is the second section. Okay. So this is all the second section. And what I have done, nothing. The float is none at this moment. The width is 96%, and I've placed only 1% on each side, padding 1% on each side. The third section, that's those clickable divs, actually. Okay. Wait. Yeah, there is nothing so special here. The color, the third div. Yeah, I've just changed the column count to 1. Fourth is whatever. Yeah, that has nothing so special about the first section. Yeah, this is the first section. Okay. So there is nothing so special. All right, so probably it's time to show you the last thing, which is the main JS file. There is so little JS file here. There is nothing so special about that. I have commented some code that didn't work, so here's what's happening. Telling the unordered list, which is the menu, to use a hide menu class. Let me show you the navbar file. Okay, so I have defined here a show menu and a hide menu. For the show menu, I say that the height of the menu is auto, the display is block, the list items is block, the anchors are block. When I want to hide them, I say the height is 0 and the display is none. The display is none. That's it. Nothing so special there. Okay, but I want the document to have this class. I want the menu to have this class at the start. So I'm placing this at the start of the JS file. Now, I define a function which is called change style, and that function changes the hidden status or shown status for the burger menu. Okay, so for example, with this button here, you see this should be like should just disappear. Okay, when you are in desktop version. Okay, so in this case, okay, oh no, sorry, this is not the case. This is the oh my god, yeah, this is for this. If you click on that, okay, so the clickable div goes back to its former collapsed or it's not collapsed, it's actually yeah, it's collapsed. Yeah, this is the collapsed state, not the expanded state. Okay, so if you click on that, after a certain timeout, 300 milliseconds, okay, the element changes the class name that it has into shown, and it shows the content. Okay. Let me show you this. Yeah, okay, this is the process event is the yeah, this is how you show your menu actually. Okay, if the checkbox is checked, okay, then you change the style into show menu, and this guy is here. This is how you show it the menu. You change the style into this. If the click box is not checked, then you hide the menu. Okay. And change style is how you change the visibility of the menu itself. So if you go back to shown, hidden, all right, so I think class name shown, come on, where is that? Section, yeah, these are the sections. So here when you click on this, on the, damn it, when you click on this clickable div, okay, that it changes the style into shown, okay, and in that case you have the display is blocked, the top is 100 pixel, I don't know why that, maximum height is 200 pixels, transition, there is some transition and overflow is in. Am I doing the right thing? I've done this project in a week back then, so I don't remember everything. But anyway, you get the idea. All right. So I'm not going to try to find everything here. The project will be placed on GitHub, so I hope you appreciate how cool SASS is. It's really useful, it's really powerful. It makes you create complex layouts in a smaller amount of time. It's less confusing, and I really recommend that. And most companies recommend using that as well. They are like demanding using one of the preprocessors for CSS. It's either LESS, SASS, or Stylus. For me, I prefer SASS. So this is it. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Please like, subscribe, or whatever you want. See you next time.